Got a secret, can you keep it? Swear this one you save. Better lock it in your pocket, taking this one to the grave. If I show you, then I know you won't tell what I said. 'Cause two can keep a secret if one of them is dead.
Hello. So, sorry this angle is a little wonky, but we're going to start off this vlog with the first review because I did manage to read all of Pretty Little Liars by Sara Shepard last night. So, obviously it's the next day, but I just think it's really interesting. So, I made some notes of some things that are like very different just in this first book from the show. And obviously the characters are all described differently, which isn't really that big of a deal, but I think some of the main differences that I noticed were like the perception of the town of Rosewood. So the show makes it seem very typical middle-class suburbia, with like Spencer and the Hastings family being very wealthy in the town, and then everyone else just sort of being like there. Like in the show, Hannah's mom is like a bank, not teller, but she works for a bank in like a low-level position, and she's definitely struggling to provide for Hannah the same lifestyle that a lot of her friends have. And then you have the Fields, who are struggling to pay for college and all this stuff. Whereas in the book, they all go to a really fancy private prep school called Rosewood Day School. And Rosewood is like a very old money town that has a lot of like estates and like huge tracts of land where people live, which makes some things from the show make more sense. Like Noel Kahn's party isn't at his lake house. It's a field party, so it's at his parents' estate and their farm, which is very interesting. And I guess I wasn't really expecting. But also, one of the things that I think makes a lot more sense in the books than it did in the show is the characters start out in 7th grade in the books, which makes more sense and then also makes less sense for some of the things that happen. But in the books, we start out with the day Allison goes missing, which is the last day of their 7th grade year, which if you're not in the US and you don't know what that means, I think they're like 13 when you finish 7th grade. But at their school, it at least includes junior high and high school, which would be like 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and then through 12th. If not, I was under the impression sort of reading this that it might be a K through 12 school, because I know some private prep schools are like that. So it's at least these girls have been in classes with the boys who are 5 years older than them. Or not in classes, but they've been on campus at the same time with these like much older boys. Whereas in the show, you sort of just rely on the fact that like Spencer has an older sister who is the same age as some of the like men that they interact with in the later years, and that's how they know them. But it makes more sense to think, oh, you went to the same school as these boys, they were 5 years older than you, but you like knew of them because you actually knew who they were and had seen them around, which I thought made a lot more sense. Also, the first book basically only covers the first episode of the show, so if you haven't seen the show, I'm not going to say, like, watch it necessarily. I know the books diverge completely from the show at some point, or the show splits off completely from the books at some point. And so I'm going to try not to just be comparing the book to the show the whole time in this video, because I feel like that would be kind of annoying. But I just feel like it's important to, like, look at the basic differences from where we start. So the books start, girls are in 7th grade, they have the flashback scene to the day Allison goes missing, and then we flash forward 3 years, and they're starting 10th grade. So I think the show, Allison goes missing after their freshman year of high school, and we pick up with them when they start 11th grade, or she goes missing after their 8th grade year, and we pick up with them at 10th grade. I don't really know, but it's a much shorter, it's 1 year later. In the show, we pick up 1 year after Allison has gone missing on the 1 year anniversary. In the book, a lot more time has passed. Another thing that I think is really interesting about this book, so I guess if you don't know the premise of this book is that there's 4 best friends, Spencer, Aria, Hannah, and Emily, and they had a 5th best friend named Allison a few years ago, but at the end of 7th grade, they were all having a sleepover in Spencer's barn, and Allison goes missing. They haven't seen her since. We pick up the story 2.5 years later. Aria has just moved back from her dad's sabbatical in Iceland, where he was like consulting for the art history department of some TV show, because he's an art history professor, not an English professor. And so once Aria moves back to Rosewood, they all start getting text messages from A, and they think A might be their friend Allison, and then at the end of the first book, Allison's body is found. I'm telling you that because I think a lot of people saw at least the first season of the show, and also this is a spoiler vlog, so I apologize in advance. If you don't want spoilers, I guess don't watch this, but also these books came out a long, long time ago, and I feel like if you were going to read them, you would have read them when you were 14. And clearly you haven't if you haven't read them yet. So I'm reading them so you don't have to. But what I think is so interesting is the first book doesn't have a lot of plot. It's just backstory. Like, we get introduced to each of the girls' big secrets, right? So Spencer's big secret is that she made out with her sister's ex-boyfriend. And then in this book, she's making out with her sister's new boyfriend. Arya's big secret is that she saw her dad hooking up with one of his students in the back of his car. And then at the beginning of this book, Arya hooks up with her teacher in a bar. And why she's in a bar is a whole nother thing that is like a segue, which I can talk about after I get through this. Emily's big secret is that she had a crush on Allison, like an actual crush. And she told Allison her feelings, and Allison didn't reciprocate. And now Emily has a crush on the girl who's moved into Allison's former house. So Hannah's secret is that when her dad started dating someone new after her parents split up, she developed an eating disorder. And so it's not handled very well on the show or so far in the books. So there's that. At the end of the first episode, Allison's body is found. The girls go to their funeral and they get this text message at the end of the funeral and it says, like, I'm still here, bitches, and I know everything. Because the thing is, all of these secrets that the girls are getting text messages about are things that only Allison should have known. So they all thought it was Allison, kind of. But Allison's dead. Boom, boom, boom. The other just, like, brief segue I want to tie in here is that I personally, I don't know how other people feel about this, but, like, yes, people drank when I was in high school. Like, parties were a thing, people were drinking. It was just a thing. But the way that they describe, like, the parties, Arya's always talking about going to bars. She goes to a bar in her, like, small town. I don't understand how they don't know that she's a kid. And I guess, like, they try to push it from the angle of, like, this is a college town. But I live in a college town. And I feel like it's almost more difficult to get in underage without, like, she doesn't have a fake ID that's talked about. She just goes in and orders a drink. And I just don't get it. And she talks about, like, how in Iceland, she would just go to bars and order drinks. And I think you're supposed to get the impression that her parents are just, like, super lax about things. But even, like, Spencer's parents let her drink at home. Hannah's mom lets her drink at home. And, like, I'm not here to, like, tell people that their parents, or tell parents that you shouldn't let your teenage kid, like, have a glass of wine with dinner. But I just feel like it's very interesting, the dynamics that are portrayed in the books. And I also think it's really funny that, like, clearly ABC Family, or like Freeform, I guess, who created the show, took all of that out because they wanted it to be, like, appropriate for teenagers. So that's something that I just thought is very funny. Also, everyone smokes in the book. No one smokes on the show. Everyone smokes in the book, which is very interesting. Like, Arya's dad smokes in the book. I think Hannah's mom smokes in the book. All the girls smoke. Spencer smokes. Spencer's sister Melissa smokes. Spencer's sister's boyfriend, who's a doctor, smokes. Also, Bren and Melissa are not engaged in the book, which pacing wise makes more sense for their, like, breakup and then other things that I know if the book follows the show's pattern, which I think it does for, like, the first iteration of A. So I'm very interested to see how all of this goes. Anyways, I feel like I've talked too long, but I'm just finding it very fascinating so far. Hello. Yes, hello, Murphy. Right over as soon as I said hello. I finished book 2 last night. And here's the thing. I'm going to give you a brief recap of what happened in the book. And I'm going to go by, like, different characters' plot lines to try to make it as quick as I possibly can. First things first. The books all seem to start so far with a prologue. And the prologue is something that happened to the girls in 6th or 7th grade, like when they first became friends, before Allison went missing, or like the first book was the night Allison went missing. So this book's prologue is the Jenna thing, which was referenced in book 1. And the Jenna thing, you don't know what it is in book 1, but in book 2 they tell you at the very beginning. And basically, the girls were all changing in, I think, Allison's room. And they look out the window and Toby is spying on them. Toby is Jenna's older brother. Jenna, I guess, is a girl from their school. So they run across the street and Allie's like, oh, we're going to get it back. And apparently Toby is really obsessed with fireworks. And so she finds one of his fireworks in the Kavanaugh's backyard, which is Toby and Jenna's last name, the Kavanaughs. And she lights it and it accidentally hits the treehouse. And then the girls hear, like, sirens and stuff. And Jenna was blinded by this fireworks explosion. Turns out only Spencer knows this, but Spencer came out and Toby was confronting Allison about it. And Allison said, you didn't see me. And he's like, yeah, I saw you guys. I saw you guys out there. And she's like, no, you didn't, because I saw you too. And if you tell on me, I'm going to tell on you. So we don't know what Allison saw Toby do at this point, okay? Spencer does. Spencer knows. But the reader doesn't know. At this point, they saw Toby and Jenna at the funeral. So they're all really worried that the Jenna thing is coming to light. Also, a lot of A's text messages have involved knowing about the Jenna thing. Knowing that they were involved, basically, in blinding Jenna. Also, Toby took the fall for it back then. Toby the next morning was like, hey, it was me, and he got sent to reform school. So that's why he hasn't been around for 3 years. 4 years? However long it's been since that happened. Because that happened when they were in 6th grade, now they're in 10th grade. So I guess like 4 years. So, present day timeline. The girls are back in high school. As we all know, Spencer's big secret from 7th grade was that she used to make out with her sister's boyfriend, Ian. And then they broke up because they went to different colleges. And now Ian is back in Rosewood. So, and then also last book, Spencer made out with her sister's boyfriend, Ren, current day boyfriend. Ren and Melissa have since broken up. Ren has moved out of the Hastings house. And Spencer has been shunned from the family, right? So she's not allowed to hang out with Ren. She's also not allowed to eat dinner with anyone. And she basically has to stay in her room. And at the beginning of this book, she's like resigned to her fate. She's not talking to Ren anymore. She's like, whatever. But Ren keeps calling and texting her. And so she can't focus on her schoolwork. So she gets a B- on her economics homework. And it's a really big deal. And the teacher says she should buy the supplemental book. So she goes to the bookstore to buy the book. And lo and behold, her credit cards have been canceled. And so she has apologized to her family for everything she did. And then the same day, they've canceled her cards. So Spencer's pissed. And so she calls Ren and is like, where do you live? I'm coming over. And she does. She goes and spends like a day and a half with Ren. She sleeps over at his place. They do the do. It's a big thing. She misses half of school the next day because she's been hanging out with Ren. And then the next day she has to go home and change because she's wearing the same clothes she wore the day before to school, and she can't do that. Even though they wear a uniform, so it really wouldn't matter, but whatever. Her sister, Melissa, is like, hey, I just wanted to let you know that, like, I've thought about your apology and I want to apologize to you too. Like, we have to be nicer to each other. Let's move past this. And so Spencer feels really guilty about what she did with Ren. But also there's this dance coming up called Foxy, and Melissa knows that Spencer's been with a boy, but Spencer doesn't want to tell her she's been with Ren because obviously that would just ruin the whole apology thing that's just happened. So at the same time, the phone rings, the home phone. For some reason, they call the home phones a lot in this book. I think it's because they came out in like 2008, which is like queen of the home phone era. I was in school when the home phones were a big thing, so I recall. But her home phone goes off. And it's Andrew Campbell, who is class president, salutatorian to Spencer's valedictorian, like the guy who Spencer's always like competing with. And he's calling her to see if she wants him to bring her his homework. He's calling her to see if she wants him to bring her homework for the day that she's missed in school. And she's like, yeah, that'd be great. And then also because Melissa is watching her, she's like, do you want to go to Foxy with me? Which is this like dance charity ball thing. I don't really know. And Andrew's like, yeah, that would be fun. And then he tries to plan all of it. And Spencer's like, whatever, I don't have time for this. So she hangs up. Then, so they're going to go to Foxy together. Melissa's off the scent of Ren. Things are good. Next, let's talk about Emily. Emily is struggling with thinking that she might be gay. At the end of the last book, at Noel Khan's party, her now ex-boyfriend, Ben, saw her kissing Maya, which is a big, big deal. That's the other thing I will say. In this book, compared to the TV show, the girls had secrets that nobody knew about. In the book, as you will see as I'm describing these things, there's always at least one or two other people who know their secrets, which leads me to believe it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal if it came out, because like Ben, Emily's vengeful ex-boyfriend, is like the worst person I could imagine having the power of like being able to out her. But maybe I'm just like so averse to other people trying to ruin my life that I will just do it myself. So, Emily doesn't want people to know about her and Maya. Also, at the end of the last book, it hinted that Emily's mom didn't want her to be friends with Maya because they have cultural differences and Maya is black. So it's like, is Pam Fields racist in these books? Kind of seems like yes, which is very strange compared to the Pam Fields of the TV show. But I digress. All of the parents are a lot different, except for Spencer's parents. Spencer's parents are just as bad in the TV show as they are in the book so far. Everyone else's parents are better in the show. And like by better, I mean like they act more like adults who have children than the characters on here. They're just like better parents, I guess. Anyways, Emily wants to quit swimming. She's decided she's going to quit swimming in the last book. Then her coach says, actually, I'm going to make you captain. And she's like, hell yeah, I'll stay on the swim team. None of my siblings have been captain. I'm going to be captain. This is going to be lit. And so she's leaving that meeting with her coach, and she's alone in like the locker room for the swim meet or whatever, and who is there but Ben? And Ben comes up to her, and she's like, hey, like, I don't remember exactly how their conversation went, but it was something to the effect of like, I'm not gay, and he kept calling her like a slur for lesbians, but he keeps calling her that. And then he like pushes himself up against her in the locker room and tries to get her to kiss him. And then who should come up and get him off of her but Toby Kavanaugh. Why is Toby there when he goes to a different school? I have no idea. I can only assume that they share like a swimming pool with like a bunch of different schools, and so it's like an area pool and not like attached to Rosewood Day. But I don't know. Toby's there, and that's when Emily's like, oh my god, Toby's back for real, and she's like, thanks, whatever, and then she leaves because she doesn't want to be alone with Toby because of the whole Jenna thing. She feels really guilty about that still and weird about it. And so, then at a swim meet, she and Toby run into each other again, and she wants to prove to Ben that she's not gay because in her mind, if Ben thinks she's not gay, then he won't try to ruin her life. Makes sense. I'm tracking. Also, 2008, you don't really want to be outed at your school, especially if you go to a like fancy private school. I get it. She goes up to Toby at the swim meet because they're competing against each other, and they go outside and like talk, and there's a photo taken of them at this outside talking thing that looks like they could be getting a little cozy, and at this thing, he asks her if she wants to go to Foxy with him, I think. Or maybe she asks him to go with her. I don't really know how it goes, but they end up deciding that they're going to go to this Foxy dance together. Hannah is still struggling with like her eating disorder thing, and also her stealing her boyfriend's car. I don't know if I mentioned this. At the end of the first book, she tries to seduce her boyfriend, Sean Ackard, who has just taken a virginity pledge, which you should never do. You should never pressure people to have sex with you. But Sean breaks up with her after this, and she gets mad at him. So she steals his car, which is actually his dad's car, and it's a very nice car, and she crashes it because she's drunk. And then she walks home from the accident, but they find out that it was her. I don't know how they found out that it was her, but they find out that it was her. So her dad comes to town. Her dad, who she has not seen in almost 4 years because he really embarrassed her the first time she met her new, like, soon-to-be stepmom and stepsister years and years ago. And that's when she started having her eating disorders because her dad kept calling her a little piggy, which, again, you should never do. Anyways, her dad is there for the first time in forever, and he's basically, like, talking about how disappointed in her he is, tells her she has to volunteer at this clinic, and then also is like, hey, but I want to spend more time with you. And she's actually really excited to spend more time with her dad, and he's like, I booked us this hotel room at the Four Seasons, I think in Philadelphia, because they live close to Philadelphia, and he's like, we're going to go to this thing, and we've got the dinner at this fancy restaurant, and then we're also going to go to this, like, play, and all this stuff. It's going to be great. We're going to have a great weekend. And she's like, yeah, but Foxy is this weekend, and I really wanted to go, and her dad's like, actually, I was really hoping we could spend this weekend together. And she's like, you know what? We'll cancel Foxy. I won't go. I spent $250 on this ticket, but I guess I'll just let it go to waste. I don't know what she ends up doing with the ticket. It doesn't really say. She's like, I'm just going to go to this weekend with my dad. It's going to be great. Me and my dad, we haven't hung out in forever. And next we move to Aria. So, Aria, as you might remember, her parents are in, like, murky waters because her dad has been having an affair with this woman named Meredith, and he told Aria that it was over, but we don't know if that's true because he's already acting weird now that they're back in the States and staying at work late, and Meredith works with him. So, it's this very weird thing. But Aria gets home from Allie's funeral. Her parents are acting strange, and she's like, you know what? She grabs her little brother, and she's like, you and me are going to a bar. Very weird behavior for 16-year-old Aria and 15-year-old Mike to be having. They go to this bar. The bartender, they talk about how she doesn't believe that they're old enough, but she doesn't card them, just gets them their drinks. They're hanging out, drinking, and then Aria sees her dad and Meredith at this bar. So she's like, Mike, we gotta bounce, because she doesn't want Mike to know that her dad's having an affair. So she and Mike are starting to leave. Mike doesn't really get why, and then he hears their dad laugh or something, so he turns around and sees them. Mike's pissed. Mike's running. Aria tries to go after him, and at this point it's raining. And so Aria gets stuck in this downpour of rain in her car, and for whatever reason, her car stops working. So she's stuck on the road. She doesn't have her phone, I guess. I don't really know why she doesn't have her phone at this point. She's already gone and got it back from her teacher's house where she left it. They broke it up. I didn't mention that. It's not really that big of a deal in the books, but she ends up going to her teacher's house after Noel Khan's party. I don't think they, like, do it, but they, like, make out a bunch and, like, she sleeps over. And then she leaves the next day. And she leaves her phone there, and when she goes back to get her phone, she finds out that A has been texting her, and so Ezra now knows that someone else knows about their relationship, and he's like, I can't believe you would tell, and she's like, I didn't tell, and then they break up. So that's what's happened with them. Anyways, Aria's car's broken down, and who should drive by but Sean Ackard, Hannah's ex-boyfriend, and he is like, hey, Arya's like, can I use your phone? And he's like, yeah, sure. So she sits in his car and she calls, I don't know who she calls. She calls somebody on his phone, whatever. She's also having a panic attack because that's the thing that book Arya does. She has panic attacks, apparently. So she's in the car with Sean, and then they just start talking about like what's going on, and she ends up telling Sean that her dad is having an affair. So again, it's not a secret. People know. But whatever, I digress. So she's telling Sean about that, and then Sean's like, I'll tell you a secret too. And his secret to her is, I don't want to be a virgin anymore. I wonder where this is going to go. So, he says that. The next time we see Arya, she gets a text from A saying that she has to break her dad and Meredith up, but she has to go to Meredith's yoga studio because Meredith teaches yoga classes, and she goes and she sees Spencer at the yoga studio, so Arya thinks, oh my god, Spencer is A. And then she leaves because she's freaked out, and Spencer's not A, by the way. But they all have something in this book where they think that like one of them is A. Like someone thinks Hannah is A, I don't remember who. Maybe Spencer? But like, it's very weird. Very weird behavior. Arya looks up Meredith's address and decides she's going to go to Meredith's house and confront her. And Sean goes with her, and Meredith laughs in her face and is like, well, your dad and I are in love, and you're wrong and stupid, basically. So, that's great. Then Sean decides that he wants to take Arya to Foxy, who Arya I thought was going to have a thing with Milcom, but I guess that comes later. I don't really know. So, Arya and Sean agree to go to Foxy, even though Hannah is Arya's, like, former best friend. That's the thing that's different about the books. In the TV show, after the funeral, the girls are back to being best friends. In the books, this whole second book, they don't really talk. It's just like the first book where they're getting these texts and they don't trust each other, which I thought was a very interesting touch and probably more realistic to people who haven't been friends in 3 years. So, at Foxy, all of the girls go. Hannah doesn't go to Foxy, right? Hannah goes to hang out with her dad. She spends this whole Saturday at like the spa or whatever. And then Saturday evening comes around. She's getting ready to go out to dinner with her dad for what she thinks is supposed to be a daddy-daughter weekend. And in walks Isabel and Kate. Kate is Hannah's horrible, bitchy stepsister who she hates, right? And her dad's like, I thought this could be a great weekend for us all to get together. And Hannah's like, you didn't say that. You said you were going to hang out with me. And turns out you just want to make a good impression for your new family. So whatever, it's this whole thing. They go to dinner. Her dad embarrasses her. He says that she joined the virginity club because she went to one meeting. He starts talking like all this stuff about her that's just like very clearly out of touch with what his daughter is like, which is really frustrating to read. This part actually made me like really upset for Hannah just because like she don't deserve that. Also, Hannah goes to the bathroom to cry because she's upset about the way her dad is talking about her because she feels so humiliated because Kate is so picture perfect. And Hannah's like, I look better now. Like I'm thin and beautiful and popular, but all anyone can see, like including my dad, is how last time we were here, I stuffed my face with brownies or whatever it was. And so it's this whole thing that she's just like having horrible flashbacks to like the first time she met Kate. And she sees Kate in the bathroom. Hannah also gets a text from A that says, you better get to Foxy, someone's here with your man, or something like that. So Hannah's like, oh my god, Sean said he wasn't going to Foxy because I wasn't going, and so like, I don't know what to do. And she thinks that she and Sean are like on the track to getting back together because they talked at the virginity club and he said that he was going to take her out to dinner sometime the next week. So she thought they were on the path to reuniting. Turns out no. So Kate tells Hannah, you go to Foxy, I'll hold down the fort here, and like, I'll tell them that an emergency came up with your friends or something. And then something falls out of Hannah's purse where it's like a pill that she stole from the clinic that she was working at. It was a Percocet. And Kate's like, oh my god, can I have that, please? And Hannah's like, yeah, sure, whatever. She thinks they're like bonding and being friends. So Hannah goes to Foxy to see who's at Foxy with her boyfriend. Turns out it's Arya. And so that's a big thing. But then Spencer finds them at Foxy. Spencer's been blowing off Andrew Campbell all night, by the way. I don't know if I've mentioned that. She's been trying to call Ren for hours. Ren finally calls her back and she answers when she's at Foxy with Andrew, and Andrew overhears her telling Ren that she'd rather be with him, so Andrew's feelings are all hurt. I'm sure that'll come back into play later, but right now it's not that important. And Hannah at Foxy is pissed at Arya because Arya's there with her ex-boyfriend. But Spencer comes and finds them and is like, hey, I've been getting these weird texts. I really think that A is Toby. And she tells them that Toby knew about the Jenna thing the whole time. What we found out at the very beginning of the book. She doesn't tell them what Allie had on Toby yet, so we still don't know. But they know that Toby is there with Emily, so they're trying to find Emily to save her. Meanwhile, Toby and Emily have actually already left, and they're driving back to Emily's house. And I don't remember what they're talking about, but they're saying something, and Toby is essentially saying something along the lines of like, I'm glad Allison's dead. I hated Allison. And he's really freaking Emily out. So she gets out of his car and runs through a cornfield because she's come to the same realization as them that Toby knows about the Jenna thing because he like mentioned something that he knows. And then also that like he was glad she's dead. So she thinks Toby killed Allison. She thinks Toby's A. She runs home through this cornfield. Toby drives up to her house and is like, Emily, please let me in. And Emily doesn't let him in because she's like, I just can't. She just can't let him in. She tries to call 911, but the phone lines are down. There's like all this stuff happening. And she tells Toby, like, I know what you did. And then Toby's like, you know what I did? Let's talk about this. And she's like, no, I don't want to talk about it. She thinks he killed Allison, which is not what Toby thinks. Toby thinks that Emily knows whatever Allison saw him doing. So, the next morning. Oh, by the way, the other things that happen is Spencer finds out that Ren has been with Melissa, so they kind of got back together, but Melissa only did it because she knew that Spencer was still talking to Ren and she wanted to break Spencer's heart. What a bitch. I mean, that situation's just messy for every reason, but Ren breaks up with Spencer because he said he started seeing someone else, and then Spencer finds out that it was Melissa. So, dun dun dun! And then Hannah gets back to the hotel room after confronting everyone and like having her emergency, and Kate has told everyone that she is on drugs, Percocet as proof, and like she went back to go to this dance because she didn't want to be with the family, and so basically she's just saying all sorts of horrible shit about Hannah. And Hannah gets back and is clearly like upset, and no one cares. And then her dad has called her mom, and in this book, Hannah's mom is the worst mom ever. Like, she comes home at 2 a.m., she's sleeping with a cop that Hannah got busted by, like all this shit is happening, and Hannah outs her mom for all of that. Her mom takes her home and they get into like a fight. Aria comes home from Foxy and finds out that A has written her mom a letter telling her that her dad was having an affair with Meredith. Meredith and her dad have left together. Her mom says that her dad's not coming back. And this is all very different from the show, by the way. But the thing that's really different is that Aria's mom blames Aria for not telling her. And bad parenting move. Because no parent should ever make their kid like keep a secret from the other parent. That's just like, and you should never take the parent's side, or like your own side. I don't know. I just feel like it was a disaster. So that was really heartbreaking for Aria, who finds out that like her parents are getting divorced, which in the grand scheme of things is not that big of a deal. I know that it is when you're going through it, but like it's fine. It can be fine, but disaster because Aria's mom blames her for it, and it's like, I can't believe you knew for 4 years and didn't tell me. So big deal. This implodes. Meanwhile, the next morning, the girls wake up to like sirens in their neighborhood or whatever. I guess they all live in the same neighborhood. I don't really know how they all end up going there. But they find out that someone has found the body of Toby Kavanaugh in the woods behind Emily's house. He committed suicide because he thought Emily knew his secret and was going to tell everyone that his life was ruined. So, are you ready for this? What Allie saw in the treehouse, Spencer tells the girls, is Toby molesting his stepsister, Jenna. Which is, again, different than what happened in the show, and worse. So, that was book 2. This was too long of an update, so I'm probably going to be cutting down a lot of it, because this is like 20 minutes, and I don't want this video to be 3 hours long. Here's the deal. I really like where this book is going. What I will say is, it's weird to me that the girls treat their secrets like such big secrets when people know. Like, a couple people know that Hannah has an eating disorder. A couple people knew about Aria's parents. And I understand that all of these things might be like bigger when you're a kid. Like, Ben saw Emily kissing that girl, and that girl knows. They don't feel like big enough secrets. And I guess the girls haven't really had to do anything yet. Like in the show, they end up being like blackmailed into doing things they don't want to do, and that hasn't really happened yet in the book. But like, I can't see how it could happen in the book because I don't see how any of this is like blackmailable, if that makes sense. But that was book 2. Hopefully, I'll read book 3 today, and it'll be good. We'll see. Hello, I just finished the 3rd book, Perfect, in the Pretty Little Liars series, and I have some thoughts. My first thing that I'm thinking of, or that I'm like realizing, is that some of these books contain inconsistencies. So like in the first book, Maya, the girl that Emily starts seeing, says that she's thinking about breaking up with her boyfriend from California, which is where Maya moved from, because she's not sure if she likes boys, or she says something about like how she thinks she might like girls or something along those lines. It's implied that that's what she means. That's not exactly what she says. But then in the 3rd book, the one that I just finished, Maya tells Emily that she came out to her family as bi over a year before. So that doesn't really make sense if she's like just now considering that maybe she likes girls. But, I mean, that's not that big of a deal, but there were a couple other things that were kind of like that. Also, like the other books, this one is building up to a big event. All of the other books build up to a death. So the first book, they find Allie's body. And in the second book, Toby Kavanaugh commits suicide. And in this book, the last thing that happens is that Hannah gets hit by a car. And the text message says she knew too much. And so it's implied that she's going to be dead, but I don't think one of the main characters is going to die in the books. Maybe they do, and that's where they're like really different from the show, but I don't think that happens. So Hannah's going to be alive, and then we're going to figure out who A is. But I'm wondering if the fourth book is going to have Hannah be like in a coma or something, and then she only comes out of the coma at the end of the fourth book to kickstart the first A reveal. I believe that the books, like the show, have multiple A's. So yeah, all very exciting. I'm still frustrated on the way that parents are acting in the books. I feel like this is a thing with YA, just generally, that parents don't act the way that parents act in real life. Some things are more realistic than others, obviously, but the big things that happen in this book are that Emily tells the police about A, and then pictures of her kissing Maya get spread all over her swim meet, and her parents threaten to send her to a conversion camp. And she obviously doesn't want to go to the conversion camp, so she's in a really big fight with her parents over this. But if she doesn't go, they're going to send her to live with some family members in Iowa, and she doesn't really want to do that either. The big thing that happens with Aria is she gets kicked out of her parents' house, and so she goes to live with Sean and his parents, and then she realizes she still has feelings for her English teacher, Mr. Fitz, and so she starts seeing Mr. Fitz again, and then Sean finds out that she's seeing Mr. Fitz because A tells him, and he calls the cops, and Mr. Fitz gets arrested. Mona and Hannah have like a really big falling out, so Hannah gets like disinvited from the court. Nothing really dramatic happens to Hannah, except for that obviously like it's really tragic to lose your friend, but compared to what's happening with the other girls, where like Aria can't go home to her parents' house because her mom kicked her out essentially, and Sean breaks up with her, so she really has nowhere to live. Spencer gets caught for plagiarizing her sister's essay. So in book 2, Spencer plagiarized her sister's essay, and then her teacher decides to nominate it for a book prize, not a book prize, an essay prize, and A sends the essay that Spencer's family thinks she wrote to her sister Melissa, who actually wrote the essay, and Melissa outs her for writing the essay. Also, Spencer finds out that she sometimes loses large chunks of her memories, and she starts to remember things about a big fight that she had with Allison right before Allison went missing in the first book, or like in the past, I guess. So that's a really big thing that's happening here. So the biggest reveals from the third book are Aria finds out by reviewing footage. That's the other thing. In the show, there's like a creepy club of older kids who are videotaping Aria and Allison and all of those girls. But in the books, it's Aria actually who is taking those videos, and they're not creepy. They're just like, she was obsessed with videotaping things. So that's where all the videos come from. But Aria finds out by reviewing video footage of the girls from the, I guess, months before Allison went missing, that Allison and Ian, Melissa's high school boyfriend, were seeing each other at the time. And Melissa confesses to Spencer that she thinks that Ian was cheating on her in high school, but Spencer thinks that she's talking about the time that she kissed Ian, when really I think Melissa is talking about Allison dating Ian. So, big yikes. Also, what kind of high school senior dates a 7th grader? Doesn't make any sense to me. Especially because Allison in 7th grade was 12. She wasn't even 13. She turned 13 at the end of the summer, and she died before that happened. So, it's like kind of crazy and gross to think about that like he was 17/18 years old dating a 12-year-old. Disgusting. Not that it's less gross that he's like interested in high school girls as an adult, because he's kind of flirting with Spencer some of the time, but just something that I've noted. Another really big difference from the show is that in the show, it's implied that Hannah's mom only dates Officer Wilden to get Hannah off, and so she's like sleeping with him to like prevent her from getting in trouble. But in the book, he's like actually her boyfriend, and it's not really that big of a focus. And the other thing is, in the books, the police don't seem that interested in the girls as suspects in Allie's murder, whereas in the show, the police are very antagonizing towards the girls, and they can't trust the police because the police think that they have something to hide and are like involved somehow. So these are all the big takeaways that I've gotten from this so far. Other big reveals are Hannah gets a text before she gets hit by the car. I might have already said this, I can't remember. But it's not from like a jumbled up anonymous number. It's from A's number. And the reader doesn't know who A is, but now Hannah knows, and that's why she gets hit by the car. So that's where I'm at with this right now. I don't know if I'm going to pick up book 4 right away because we're in a new month and I've got a new TBR to read. So depending on how that TBR goes, hopefully I will get through some books this month. If I can get through all of these books this month, then this video might go up in February. If not, I'm expecting it to go up in March, just because I didn't want to put any of these books on my actual TBR, and I kind of thought my TBR game would be nice to me, but since it was mean to me and I have 12 books to read in February, I don't know that I'm going to be able to get through all 12 of those, plus the next 12. I have 12 more books to read of the Pretty Little Liars series. So I'm reading about one a day, so I could do it in 12 days, but then I don't know if I'd get through the rest of my TBR, if that makes sense. So I will just update you when I have another update. Hello, Murphy has decided to join me for this update. I'm in here because it's snowing, and so my boyfriend is working from home, and so this is like the farthest room from where he works. So hopefully that this sound won't bother him, and also I get really embarrassed when I think about the fact that someone might hear me recording a video. So that's why I'm in here. But this is Murphy, if you haven't met him before. This is my dog. He's a 4-year-old Border Collie Blue Heeler Pit Bull mix, and we love him very much. And he's a big ham, so he's just gonna hang out, I guess, for this portion of the video. But I did finish the 4th Pretty Little Liars book last night. I think it's called Unbelievable, and it's the wrap-up of the first arc of the series. And I don't know if Sara Shepard intended on continuing it past this first arc when she wrote it, because she does tie up a lot of loose ends. One thing that I do respect about the books over the show, or that I think the books do a better job of, is the show leaves a lot of open questions, whereas the book wraps things up a lot better. So what I mean by that is the book will have, I guess I should explain. So in this book we find out who the original A person is, and if you know anything about A knows everything about these girls' lives, things that only Alison de Laurentiis, the girl who died in the first book, or I guess before the series started, but they discovered the body in the first book. Only Allie would have known these things about the girls. So one of the things that the show never really addressed that always kind of frustrated me was, how did A know any of these things? And when they reveal who A is in this book, A does the whole villain spiel where they explain how they knew everything about the girls. And A basically says, in the first book, when Maya moves into the De Laurentiis' old house, Maya's family, they throw out Allie's old things, and in her old things was a diary that contained all of these secrets. And so that's what A has been using to blackmail the girls with this whole time. So I thought that was a really clever reveal, and it made a lot of sense, which the show never gives you. So I really enjoyed that that was in the book, or at least I don't remember that being in the show, because I remember finding out who A was and then being like, okay, great, they've been stalking the girls, but how do they know all this stuff that used to happen? And the show makes it seem like A and Allison had some kind of rapport, and that this A thing started before Allison even went missing, which the book has not indicated, at least at this point, that that is what has happened. So, to tell you what happened in the 4th book. At the end of the 3rd book, Emily gets caught with Maya again, so her parents follow through on their threat to send her to Iowa. So when we start the 4th book, Emily is in Iowa. Hannah's been hit by a car, so she's in a coma, which I suspected was going to be how they were going to play off her not knowing who A was. But when she wakes up from the coma, she doesn't remember anything that happened after the point where she got sent a dress to go to Mona's party, which A sent her a dress that was too small, so she had this really embarrassing moment at the party, and Mona made fun of her and called her a whale, which is just horrible. But anyways, and then she ended up hooking up with Lucas that night, but she doesn't remember that, so she's confused as to why Lucas is following her around and acting like they have some sort of relationship going, and she doesn't really want to be with him. One thing that I find really frustrating about Hannah in the books, the way she's portrayed, half the time she seems like a really sweet girl who's just obviously been fed all this misinformation about herself and her body and how she should feel about that. And then she's very much internalized every negative thing that other people have said about her, and that has turned her into kind of a mean, nasty person at times. But then she's just really hyper focused on wanting to be like the most popular girl, the prettiest girl, etc., etc. And so she's really letting that get in the way of her being able to develop a relationship with Lucas. So that's really frustrating. I love Hannah and Lucas together in the books. That's something that I did not anticipate liking that much, but I actually think he's a really great love interest for her. And I remember watching the show and kind of wondering if Hannah and Lucas were going to get together because of the way they like interacted. Because they both obviously had been like quote unquote losers at one point before Allie took Hannah under her wing. But in the books, actually what happened is Lucas liked Hannah when she was still like chubby and in 7th grade. And he didn't become unpopular until after he liked Hannah. And it's because Allie started a mean rumor about him that he was a hermaphrodite. So we find that out. And so Hannah's like, God, Allie wasn't even really my friend. She just wanted to control my life. Which is interesting. All the girls are figuring all of these things out. Another thing that I thought was really interesting about the books versus the shows, and I've kind of mentioned this before, is the dynamic that the police play. Because in the books, Aria is convinced, because A has been giving her clues that Spencer is the one who killed Allison, and Aria thinks that that's true. So Aria thinks maybe Spencer has something to do with being A or something. So Aria tells the police that, and they're like, this is what happened on the night that Allison was murdered. Like, she was killed. Someone would have had to be stronger than her. It would have taken longer than the amount of time you said that Spencer was out of the barn. Like, all of these things are why it can't really be Spencer. And Aria's like, oh, well, that, I guess, ruins my plan. But Spencer also is getting messages from A that make it seem like she or her sister, Melissa, are the one who killed Allison. But when the girls figure out who A is, which I'm going to reveal in a second. I'm trying to be, like, dramatic here, but I don't know if it really matters. So all of these things are happening, right? Aria doesn't really trust Spencer. Spencer doesn't think she can trust Aria. Hannah's in a coma, so they obviously can't talk to her. Emily's in Iowa, so she's sort of off the table as well. And each of these books builds up to like kind of a big event or like a party. So the first book actually builds up to them finding Allison's body, but it's also like Noel Kahn's party is that week. The second book builds up to Foxy, that dance thing. And the third book builds up to Mona's birthday party. So the fourth book builds up to Hannah's like recovery party. So Hannah gets out of her coma and Spencer and Mona team up to plan this party at the country club for Hannah's like revival or whatever. And it is at the country club. Hannah's having all this weird stuff with like thinking that she and Mona are friends. Mona tells the girls that she's been getting messages from A too because she wants to like loop herself in on this little act thing. And so all the girls are like bonding over that. That's how Spencer and Mona end up like sort of being friends. And then Spencer tells Mona that she wants to tell the police she thinks Melissa's who killed Allison because A keeps giving her clues that Melissa's the one who killed Allison. So Mona's like, okay, great, we'll go to the police together, that'll be fine. And then after they leave, somebody says something that jogs Hannah's memory. She doesn't remember why she got hit by the car. Like, she doesn't remember the thing that she knew when A said she knew too much. So Hannah found out who A was at the end of book 3, which we already knew, but the reader didn't know who A was. So then Hannah says A was Mona. And that's really bad, obviously, because Spencer is with Mona right now. Also, somehow, somewhere in this subplot's not really important, which is why I'm not talking about it, but Emily was in Iowa for most of this book, and then she caught a bus back to her parents' house because she ran away from her aunt and uncle in Iowa, and then she saw her parents on the news saying that they missed her and they wanted her to come home and they loved her, and so she does. And then she and Maya are having, like, relationship issues because she kissed, or she didn't even kiss a girl in Iowa. She just, like, danced with a girl in Iowa, and then the girl in Iowa, for whatever reason, ends up coming to Rosewood, and she's hanging out at the party. Her name is Trista. She's not really an important character. She also makes out with Noel Kahn at Hannah's recovery party. I don't really know why that was included. None of that really made sense to me, but anyways, there you have it. If you were wondering about what happened to Emily, so Emily is at Hannah's party. She did make it back to Rosewood, and she's back involved in these girls' lives. And there you have it. So, the girls figure out that Mona is A. They know Spencer's with Mona, so they text Spencer. I don't remember which one of them texts her, but it doesn't really matter. Someone texts her and says, Mona is A, like, watch your back. And Mona sees the text message, and the stupid person keeps, like, double texting. That's what happened. I think it was Aria. She sends, like, 50 texts, and so obviously there's no way Spencer can suddenly, like, look at that and then, like, veer away from it. But Mona figures out that Spencer has figured it out, and she tries to talk Spencer into joining the A-team with her while also diverting the police, because the girls go to the police station thinking that's where Mona and Spencer went. Mona and Spencer obviously weren't going to the police station because Spencer found out that Mona was A. So Spencer calls on speakerphone when the girls are at the police station, and she's like describing where they are and talking about like what road they're on so that the police can follow them. Really smart plan, except for Mona finds out what she's doing, grabs her phone, throws it out the window, and then turns around and goes a different direction. So they end up going to this rock quarry, and Spencer and Mona get in a fight. Mona falls off the edge of the cliff, breaks her neck, and dies. So then the police, I don't know how they figure out, someone like reports that there's a disturbance on this rock quarry, which doesn't make any sense because they said that the rock quarry was like empty or vacant or whatever. So all the other girls show up, as well as Officer Wilden, to the scene of the crime. There's an ambulance that comes for Mona. They find out that Mona has died. And then, while all of this is going on, the police have also picked together, because the girls tipped them off that Allison had been seeing Ian Thomas during 7th grade, I guess, which again is really gross, but none of my business. I don't know. Mona tells Spencer that the last diary entry, after she explains how she knew all the stuff about the girls, that she had Allison's diary, she said that the last diary entry written on the day that Allison went missing and also was probably murdered, said that she gave Ian, it said that Allison gave Ian an ultimatum. And basically that ultimatum was, I want you to break up with your girlfriend, Melissa Hastings, Spencer's sister, or I'm going to tell everyone that you've been seeing me. Which obviously would not be good because he's an 18-year-old pseudo-man, I suppose, and she's 12. So that's really gross. But anyways, no, again, disgusting. I don't know why Sara Shepard made the age gap that big. I don't get it. I would get that big of an age gap if she was like 15, like a freshman versus senior, but then I guess it wouldn't have like the creepy element. But I don't understand it at all. So the police are re-questioning Melissa and Ian, and Melissa says that she remembered that Ian actually left the night that Allison went missing. She and Ian had been drinking, which is what she claims, or why she claims that she didn't tell the police the truth the first time, is because she didn't want to get in trouble for drinking, even though this happened 3-4 years ago. Doesn't matter, whatever. So Ian left in the middle of the night and then came back when Melissa woke up and Ian was back, but he had been gone for several hours in the middle of the night. So the police used this as probable cause to arrest him, I suppose, and they arrest him for the murder of Allison De Laurentiis. That is where the book ends. The girls all get to go to the courthouse and see his like bail hearing, and that he's not given bond, which basically means that he's got to stay in prison or stay in jail until his trial. So that's where the first like quartet ends, I guess. And then there's a cover change for the next books. So I'm wondering if how many books? There's 16 books and that was only 4. So the 12 next books are, let me double check that there's 16 books. Hold on. There's 16 books in the series. The next 4 have the different style of cover. And then after that, books 9 through 16 have another style of cover that's different. So I'm wondering if there's like 3 arcs. There were kind of 3 arcs to the show, so I guess that would make sense. Although I do think after the end of arc 1 is when the show really diverges, and I don't think that the like person who was A in the show is even a character in the books. This was supposed to be like a 5-minute update, and it's been like a 15-minute update. So I am gonna go. I'll catch you when I read the 5th book. Okay, hi. I've read through 2 more of the books and I have some brief thoughts, so I want to just sort of get this out of the way with just a quick sum up. I've read book 5 and 6 now, and so in this set of books, the girls are actually becoming friends and like talking to each other about what's happening. In the first like 4 books, they really didn't speak much and interact much, and they all have their own like clique things going on, and that's definitely still present in books 5 and 6, but they're definitely becoming more dependent upon each other, I think because Ian has been arrested. But the end of book 5, I'm just going to like quickly give you a sum up of where all of the girls go in books 5 and 6 to sort of hopefully let this make sense. So book 5, they're gearing up for Ian's trial. They know they all have to speak, but the night before the trial, Ian goes missing. And before he goes missing, he shows up at Spencer's house. He got out on house arrest. I don't really know why. His mom was sick, and so he gets out on house arrest and then somehow was able to break house arrest without anyone knowing. Not sure exactly how that happened, but anyways, he goes to Spencer's house and tells Spencer that he didn't do it, and the police know who did it, but they're covering something up. So the girls are now suspicious of Wilden, which I think they've kind of been suspicious of Wilden for a while, but that really amps up in 5 and 6. Ian is missing. The whole town is looking for him. Spencer's parents, meanwhile, are throwing a fundraiser at their house for Rosewood Day because of Spencer's whole Golden Orchid essay thing where she, like, plagiarized her sister's essay and won a contest using it. And she later was like, hey, I actually plagiarized this. And so she did the right thing, but her parents didn't want her to do that. So they've been giving her the cold shoulder ever since. Meanwhile, Spencer actually went down to Florida for someone's funeral, and she went to like a will reading, and everyone in her family, like all of her cousins, got $2 million, but she didn't get any money. And her sister thinks has this theory now. Melissa has this theory that Spencer is actually adopted, and that's why she didn't get any money. So there's that. So into book 5, they're all at this fundraiser that Spencer's parents are throwing at their house. Everyone is there. So what's going on with Aria is that her mom has started dating this guy who's an artist. And in the beginning of the book, she meets him first, actually, and thinks he's, like, really cute. But then she finds out that it's her mom's boyfriend, and she's like, oh, that's so weird. Again, Aria just going after people who are, like, at an inappropriate age difference. Like, he's in his early 30s, but, like, still, she's 16, so gross. Regardless, he kisses her later, and she's like, hey, that made me really uncomfortable. And he's like, I don't think it did. I think you liked it. You can't tell your mom because of this, this, and this, even though she absolutely should tell her mom, but it's fine. Also, at the party, Spencer decides that she likes this guy, Andrew, who is also, if you remember, who she took to Foxy when she was dating Ren, but pretending not to date Ren. So they're sort of, like, coming back into focus. He's this guy that she's always had, like, competition with for school stuff. I actually really like their relationship, which leads me to believe it probably won't last, but it is what it is. Hannah overhears her stepsister Kate on the phone. Also, I guess I should start with this. Hannah's mom gets a job in Singapore at the end of the 4th book, and I don't think I ever mentioned it. So Hannah's dad and his new wife or fiance, Isabel, and her daughter Kate, so his stepdaughter, come to live with them. Kate and Hannah have a really, like, tenuous past where Kate has been mean to her. I've mentioned her before, but Kate now attends Rosewood, and she and Hannah sort of become friends at the beginning of this book, but they are definitely, like, Hannah doesn't trust her, and she starts getting messages from A that she shouldn't trust her. So Hannah is, like, paying really close attention to that, and then she overhears Kate on the phone telling someone essentially that she's gonna try to, like, out Hannah's secret. She doesn't actually say that, but that's what it sounds like to Hannah. So at this big fundraiser, Hannah tells everyone that Kate has herpes, which Kate has alluded that she, like, got into some trouble of the, like, gynecological variety. She then says it's not herpes, but because Hannah tells everyone that Kate has herpes and really hurts her feelings, number one, Hannah gets grounded, and so she's told she's not allowed to go anywhere without Kate, which is just not the punishment I would pick if I was, I don't know. I don't understand the, like, thought process that Mr. Marin is going through. I understand that he wants his daughters to be friends, but also, like, I don't know. It's weird to me that he hasn't seen Hannah in, like, 3 years, and now he's like, well, I want to marry this woman, and she's got a kid your age. Maybe you guys will get along. I really like her. I've seen her every day for 3 years. I don't understand why he's not getting why that would upset Hannah, but I don't know. Also, Lucas breaks up with Hannah because she tells everyone that Kate has herpes, because he's like, you're just mean. I thought you weren't this girl anymore. And Hannah's like, it's important to me to be popular, and so they break up. That's that. Then, interestingly enough, Emily starts dating a guy in this one. So we had this whole arc about her not knowing if she was gay or not and trying to decide if she likes boys. And now it sounds like she's pan or something. She's like, I don't like the gender of someone. I like the person, and then their gender is just sort of, like, not important to me, which is fine, but it's just not what Sara Shepard built up that Emily would be. Like, she had full, like, thought processes, there were entire sections in Emily's point of view dedicated to her being like, don't look at that girl's legs, stop looking at that girl's boobs, notice the boys, what do the boys look like, and just being, like, not interested in them. So, like, it just doesn't feel like she built it to work this way. But anyways, Emily's dating a guy now. She met him at church, which is great. And she doesn't tell him that she used to date Maya, or that she's, like, bi or whatever. Because first of all, she's not really sure, so that's, I think, why she doesn't say anything. But then she starts getting these threatening texts from A that A is going to tell him. And A makes it seem like he's going to be really disturbed and disgusted by this. But eventually, Emily just outs herself and is like, hey, I used to date this girl, Maya. And he's like, oh, okay, that's fine. And that's it. So, much ado about nothing. Also, I didn't get that as, like, A's punishment, because Emily does really, like, struggle with it and freak out over it, and I get that, like, coming out is a big thing, but he was literally the only person who didn't know. And I would understand more so if you wanted to keep it private amongst people who are close to you. But if it's your boyfriend, I feel like he's probably pretty close to you. So it didn't really make sense to me. I didn't get it. So like I mentioned, Ian Thomas skipped town before the book started, or at the very beginning of the book. And at the party, the girls start getting text messages that something is in the woods for them, and they go in the woods and it's Ian Thomas's body. So that's where book 5 leaves off. And at the beginning of book 6, so every book starts with a flashback. And I should have mentioned this already, but books 5 and 6 both start with flashbacks from the same day. And that day is, there's this capture the flag game that Rosewood School does every year, where they cut up a flag and they hide pieces of it. And if you find a piece, you get to decorate your piece, and then you turn it back in and it goes into this time capsule thing. So in 6th grade, Allie was bragging to a bunch of people that she was going to find a piece because her brother was going to hide it and she was going to know where it was hidden. And Ian Thomas tells her he would kill her for her piece, which is just bonkers. So that's on the steps of the school. That's the scene that you see at the beginning of the 5th book. At the beginning of the 6th book, you see a scene a couple days later after Allie has already found the flag. And it's Arya, Spencer, Hannah, and Emily at Allie's house trying to steal the flag. Because in the rules, you can like steal the flag from somebody. That's like part of it. I don't know why. I don't know. So when they get there, Allie says, someone already stole my flag. You're too late. And she doesn't know who it is. But then flash forward a little bit and you find out that Arya is who found the flag because Jason actually stole it. And Arya, when she was walking home through the woods, sees Jason in the woods and he gives her the flag. And Arya has a crush on Jason when all of this is happening and also still in present day. So when the girls try to show the body of Ian to the police at the beginning of this book, they say they can't find anything. And eventually they search the whole woods. They can't find Ian's body. So they pretty much tell the press the girls made it up, which is great for them. And then Wilden also is like, you guys need to stop blaming everything on this A person. I'm telling you, this is just a copycat. And like, no, you're not actually in danger. And I think you're just like getting a little out of your head about it. But they also start to suspect Wilden of different things. So for Arya is uncomfortable by her mom's boyfriend, so she decides to move in with her dad and his now pregnant girlfriend Meredith. And she also is skipping school one day and gonna go into Philadelphia, and she runs into Jason on the train station, and they wind up going on a couple of different dates. And Arya's mom is trying to get, like, Arya hasn't told her mom why she's not coming home and why she hasn't seen her around. So her mom invites her to this opening because her mom's an artist and she's going to have a piece hung at this opening of this hotel in town that used to be a mental institution called the Radley. Arya invites Jason to go with her to this opening. She got an invite with a +1 and he like freaks out and leaves, and she thinks that's really weird. She doesn't really understand why he would like get mad at her about that. And then she gets an email later from Jason saying like, hey, sorry I freaked out. Come meet me at my house. This is like the address that my parents are staying at for the trial. And she goes and essentially like breaks in because there's a dog barking at her and she gets scared. So she goes and breaks into this house and starts snooping through his old yearbooks, and she finds this page where Officer Darren Wilden writes like something about like he and Jason need to get Ian Thomas back for something. I don't know for what. But then Jason comes in and he's pissed because he didn't send her that email. A did. And he doesn't know why the hell she's in his house. He's like, I would never have invited you here. What are you doing here? So anyways, she leaves. And then for Hannah, like I mentioned, has to go everywhere with Kate. And they get into this weird competition over Arya's brother. So they both start trying to go after Mike Montgomery to try to date him. And there's this really weird thing where he's like objectifying them both. Gross, rude, crude. Like, Mike is my worst nightmare. Even of teenage boys, he like seems like the worst of the worst to me. And yet, at the end of all of this, when they're at the Radley for their like the hotel opening, they also go. She goes as Mike's date. It turns out that Mike had a bet with the lacrosse guys that he could get one of the older girls to invite him to prom. And Hannah invites him to prom because she wants to win over Kate. And Kate and Hannah have been like going at it to get Mike. So like neither of them really liked each other, but then it turns out that they both actually did start to like each other, even though the reader doesn't see that at all. And I hated it. I didn't understand why it happened that way. I felt like it could have been cute, but I just didn't get it. I didn't get it. And that's that. That's that on that. Also, I forgot to mention, Hannah found a piece of the flag. So Hannah found a piece of this capsule flag thing, and she decided to decorate it the way that Allie described that she decorated her flag. But when the other girls see it, they find out that Arya took it because Arya's like, wait, I took the flag. And she's like, that's not what Allie decorated it as. I can show you Allie's flag. I kept it all these years because I was too embarrassed to tell anyone that I had it. Anyways, Emily and her boyfriend wound up doing the do. So that's great. That's fine. They say they love each other. I'm pretty sure they've known each other a week, but it is what it is. And somehow his mom finds out and starts dropping all these nasty hints and saying really mean things to Emily. And she's like at their house for dinner and she keeps commenting on how Emily's very easy and very loose and just all sorts of like cringy stuff that I don't know how Isaac, her boyfriend, didn't pick up on it at all, but he didn't, so whatever. And Emily's helping with the dishes and she goes to put something away in a drawer and she finds a picture of her and Isaac together with her head cut off only. So she's like, okay, Isaac's mom hates me. That's fine. She's trying to figure out how to tell him when she's out to dinner with her sister. And his mom confronts her in the bathroom at an Applebee's and is like, you're not allowed back in my house again. I hate you. Like all this, like this big confrontation thing. And obviously that makes Emily really upset. She goes to tell Isaac about it and he's like, God, my last girlfriend did the same thing. You guys are all crazy. Doesn't believe her. So Emily ends up being Aria's date to the Radley thing since Jason won't go with her. And obviously she's not going with Isaac anymore. He ends up working the event because his parents are caterers and they're catering the event. Now we're pretty much all caught up. Everyone is at the Radley. The girls are all talking to each other. And then Emily also got a text at some point saying to go back to her first love's house. So she went to Allie's house and the Kavanaughs, which is like Jenna, the blind girl, and Toby, who died in the second book. They live in that house. And she sees Wilden in there yelling at Jenna. And so she doesn't know what's going on with that, but that's something to know. That has been seen. I didn't know where to put that in here because it has not yet come to fruition what that means. When Emily goes to the hotel opening, she somehow finds like a visitor's log for Radley back when it was a sanitarium before it was a hotel. And I don't know why it was in there, but it was. Whatever. Whatever. So she finds it and she sees that Jason De Laurentiis visited Radley once a week from the time he moved to Rosewood until the first capture the flag like weekend thing. So that's weird. They don't really know. She doesn't know why that's happening, but it makes them very suspicious of Jason and then also very suspicious of Darren because Aria tells them what she saw in the yearbook about Darren, Wilden, and Jason being friends. And they also find out that, I guess just more information about Darren and Jason being friends because Hannah's mom used to date Darren and she remembers seeing his like car outside of school picking Jason up one day, even though they were the same age. I don't really know. I don't really get why that was important at all. But then the other girls get a text warning them basically that something bad is going to happen at the barn, which is where Spencer has been. We'll get to it. But Spencer's at the barn. She didn't come to the Radley. But also, I just want to point out, Hannah didn't get this text because she changed her phone number and A can't find her now. So I don't understand how none of the other girls did that. Like, I assumed it wouldn't work, and that's why they didn't do it in the show, but Hannah did it in the book, and it worked, apparently. So she hasn't heard from A this whole time, which is very interesting. But then, for Spencer. So Spencer and Andrew get together, and Andrew suggests, when Spencer tells him that she thinks she's adopted, that she uses this website to find her birth mom. So she uses the website. A woman reaches out to her and is like, hey, I bought you this train ticket to New York City to come meet me. And Spencer goes. And she, like, falls in love with the city, loves her mom. They get along really great. And her mom was like, you know what? You should move here. How? I don't know. So Spencer gets in touch with a realtor in New York that her mom sets her up with and ends up, like, transferring all of her money. No, she just gives him her account details of her, like, college fund. And all of her money gets stolen because it wasn't actually a real apartment that they were talking about setting her up in. She ends up going to New York to try to find this real apartment, and it doesn't exist. The address doesn't exist. Her mom is nowhere to be found. The realtor has disconnected his phone. Like, she got scammed, basically. So she's really upset about that, so that's why she doesn't go to the Radley. And then Aria ends up running home to get the flag that Allie decorated that she still has because she wants to compare it to the flag that Hannah decorated based on Allie's description of what she put on her flag, because they're gonna like figure out what the differences are. I don't know what, like, they think it's a clue. I don't know why they think it's a clue, because Hannah dreamed about it actually is why they think it's a clue. But like, I don't get why you would think that that's real, but I mean, more power to you if you believe in your dreams like that. It's not for me. So Emily and Hannah show up at Spencer's barn and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe you're okay. We got this really weird text saying that something bad was going to happen to you. And then they start smelling gasoline, and then they hear a match, and then they see the whole barn go up in flames. And meanwhile, Aria sees all this happening. She's running back from her house with the piece of the flag. and she sees a person trapped under a log that's caught on fire from all the flames. And when she pulls the girl off, they like run through the woods, get to the edge, and they find the other girls, and they're all there coughing and like inhaling a bunch of smoke. And they find out that who would it be? It's Allison De Laurentiis. Can you believe that? Isn't that crazy? So it's Allie. Allie is in the woods, not dead, where she was supposed to be. Can't wait to find out what happens next. Hello. So I finished book 7 and book 8. I got audiobooks of them, so I was able to knock them both out yesterday, which was February 9th. So I'm doing really well with this challenge. I'm very excited with the direction that it's going and the speed that I'm able to complete all of this in. But it does end the second arc. So like I suspected, the book covers and the way they look are definitely related to what is happening and like the arc that the books are on. So it seems like the last 8 books in the series are on the same arc, but they all, I believe, take place when the girls are seniors, whereas the first 8 books took place when the girls were juniors. And so essentially what happened in book 7 is a lot of like misdirection. So there was sort of a push from A to get the girls out of town, it seemed like. I'm not really sure what that was supposed to accomplish. They sent A to an Amish community, and she found out that Darren Wilden, the now Rosewood police officer, was once a part of that community, which has not yet come to be like valid information that's necessary for anything. So I don't really know why that has been placed, but maybe that'll come to play in the next iteration. It also, they never really discussed when Darren came to Rosewood, so I don't know if he like, the Amish community made it seem like he left during Rumspringa, but I'm pretty sure Rumspringa happens when you're 18, so he probably wouldn't be a high schooler at that point. I don't really know what happened there. And also, I don't know how he would be able to get into this like elite prep school if he had come from an Amish community and never had any like formal education. So very confusing for that one. And then Hannah gets into a mental institution because her dad is convinced. He gets this letter from like a concerned party saying that they think it'll be best if she goes to this mental hospital. And when she's there, she meets this girl, Iris, and Iris knows a lot of stuff about Hannah and exposes that she's at this mental hospital and does this expose for some magazine about how all of the girls are lying. So the press at this point thinks that the girls have killed Allie. And at the end of this book, it comes to light that Spencer's dad is actually Allie's dad as well. Like he and Allie's mom were having an affair. And he mentioned something about how he didn't know about the kids until later. So Spencer's like, oh my God, Jason and Allie are both my siblings. And I just never know. I just never knew. So that is a really big reveal at the end of this book. Spencer's parents break up because of it. And also all 4 of the girls get arrested. So that's the other like big thing that happens in this book. Also, Ari starts dating Noel Kahn in this book. I don't know if I've already mentioned that they're sort of talking, but they started talking at the like Radley party thing, and they've sort of started dating at this point. Nothing really happens in this book regarding them, but I just thought I would mention it because I think it's going to come up later. But all of the girls, like I mentioned, the police are convinced for some reason that the reader never finds out why, but the police are convinced that the girls had something to do with Allison's death, so they get arrested for her murder and then like almost immediately released because they actually find out that it was Billy. You didn't even know who Billy is. I forgot. So it's someone, they end up arresting someone who has not been a part of the books at all. They mentioned him in one book, in one flashback scene, I'm pretty sure. And it's this guy who used to work on the construction crew outside of Allie's house. And he is charged with her murder. And also, he's charged with the murder of Jenna Kavanaugh because Jenna Kavanaugh's body was found dead. Spoiler alert, he's not the one who killed them, and they find out pretty quickly in book 8 that it wasn't him, because he has like solid alibis for both girls' murders. Spencer's been getting IMs from Ian. I don't know if I've mentioned that before. It's obviously not Ian because the girl saw Ian's dead body, right? But they seem to be forgetting that they saw his dead body, or like they don't think he was really dead. I don't know what was going on in their heads with that, but Spencer starts getting IMs from Ian. That's how she finds out that her dad is Allison's dad. And the IMs are actually coming from Billy. And there's also Polaroids of the girls from their slumber party that Allie went missing from in Billy's van. Also, Billy has a van, which is never a good sign. But Billy didn't do it. He has a solid alibi. He wasn't even in Rosewood at the time of either of the murders. So, who done it? But you don't really find out all of that until the middle of book 8, when they're, like, again, looking for who the killer could have been. So in book 8, at the beginning, the De Laurentises decide that it's time for them to make an announcement, and they bring out their other daughter. So Allison De Laurentiis had a twin named Courtney, who has been in and out of hospitals her whole life. So she was never really a part of the community, and everyone's meeting her for the first time, except for Darren Wilden already knew about her because he was friends with Jason. Melissa knew about her, which you find out in this book. I don't remember why Jason told Melissa. I think he, like, accidentally told her because they, like, had a fling before she started dating Ian Thomas. So Ian Thomas knew that there was an extra sister. And all of them knew before any of the 4 girls even became friends with Allison in 6th grade. So, Courtney is now being introduced to the community, and all the girls are like, holy shit, what is going on? And one by one, Courtney starts revealing to them that actually she's not Courtney, she's Allison. And Courtney took her place on the night that she got murdered. And so Courtney was the one who got murdered. And Allison was sent to a mental hospital because she tried to tell her parents, no, I'm Allie, let me stay. And that's what Courtney always did. So apparently Courtney had, like, tried to kill Allison all while they were growing up. And did all sorts of, like, weird things. So she was in Radley, the institution, which is why Jason would visit there sometimes. And then Courtney was sent to the place that Hannah wound up being sent to in book 7. So Iris was actually Courtney's roommate. And Courtney had been living back at home. I don't know how long she'd been there when all of this happened. I think they said since November. So she'd been back in Yarmouth, I guess, is where her family lives now. They don't live in Rosewood anymore. They live in Yarmouth, which is a town, I guess, that's nearby. And she'd been living at home with them for a couple months, which, if you recall, Aria broke into that house because Jason lived there, and she thought he told her to meet her there, and so she thought that meant she could break in. I don't really know what was going through her head with that. But Jason freaked out and was like, did you go in the main house? And she was like, no. And also, Jason acted really weird about the Radley being turned into a hotel. Jason's name was on the ledger because he'd been visiting Courtney. But notably, he stopped visiting Courtney the week that all of the girls became friends with her, or became friends with Allison, excuse me. So this girl is saying, Courtney is dead. She tried to take my place. Somebody killed her because they were after me, and now I am alive, but I'm Allison, but the whole community is going to think I'm Courtney. And it's very confusing for a minute, but all of the girls eventually believe that Allison is who she says she is, and they have this big dance. So like I said, there's, like, a big event that all of the books are leading up to. I can't remember what book 7's event was, but I know that there was one. Also, this brings up again that the girls saw Allison outside of the fire, but it was really Allison, but it was Allison and Courtney. Very confusing. If you're confused, it's a little confusing to try to talk about, but it was the other twin who did not die. So, and she got away from it because she called Darren Wilden, who is the person who kept telling the girls, stop telling people you've seen Allison, because he knew that it was actually Courtney, it was actually Allison, but he thought it was actually Courtney who is trying to lay low because her parents don't want to introduce her to the community yet, because they're waiting to see until the person who killed her twin gets caught. So they caught Billy, and they were like, okay, now we can introduce her. Interestingly, though, Ian was in jail for a couple months, and they never brought Courtney out and said, this is Courtney. So I don't know what really that was, unless they knew the whole time that Ian didn't do it. Not entirely sure. But this is, like, the craziest reveal, and I kind of wish this had been the end, just because of how crazy it was, and it's definitely, like, the end of Act 1. Or, I guess, the end of Act 2, because the end of Act 1 was Mona. But, like, I kind of wish Mona had never been A. I kind of wish it had been this person the whole time, because the girls go to their, like, Valentine's Day dance. Aria goes with Noel Kahn. Noel Kahn and Allie used to flirt a lot before Allie was killed. So Aria's really, really nervous about Allie being back. And at the dance, Aria sees Allie kissing Noel Kahn. But then she also sees Allie break away, slap Noel Kahn in the face, and be like, what are you doing? Aria's my friend. Why would you do this? And Noel still thinks it's Courtney, by the way. Everyone thinks it's Courtney except for like the 4 main girls. So they all decide to go to Allie's/Courtney's parents' house in the Poconos, and for their like after party after their dance. So all of the girls get in the car, go to the Poconos. Meanwhile, the Hastings can't find Spencer. They know Spencer made an appointment to go to the mental hospital that Courtney stayed at. Courtney/Allie stayed in, which is also where Hannah was placed. And they haven't seen her since that happened. So they are starting to think Melissa might be A. Again, it's fine. So the girls go to the Poconos. They decide that they're going to go like swimming in the hot tub. So they all put on bikinis. And then they can't find Allie anywhere. And then they find her. She comes out of somewhere and she's like, oh my gosh, it's too cold to go in the hot tub. So instead, let's just hang out in here. And she decides that they're going to recreate the night she went missing. So she's going to hypnotize them again, and they're just going to recreate it. And when they do the hypnosis, Spencer has a vivid memory of seeing in the window when she's like fighting, because she was fighting with Allie over opening or closing the blinds, and then she told Allie to leave because they were like in a fight over that, which seems stupid, but I think they had like a bunch of tension just built up. And then Allie leaves and then gets murdered, you know, as one does. So she has this memory suddenly from that night of seeing out the window and seeing a girl who looked a lot like Allie on the other side taking pictures of them. So they figure it was Courtney taking pictures of us. But then she has a memory of somebody wearing like a ring with their initial. I can't remember which sister it was, but it basically clues Spencer into the fact that she thinks the person who is there torturing them was also with them on that night or killed their... She thinks that Courtney killed their Allie. So that's what like her thought process is right now. She thinks that the girl who's said she was Courtney and then said she was Allie is actually Courtney and that she killed Allie. But when they wake up from their little trance, they are locked in this room. And they get a note, like an actual letter this time, that basically explains to them that the person who invited them there is actually Allie, but they were never friends with Allie. They were always friends with Courtney, who on the day of the time capsule flag came out of the house, swapped rings. So the girls had initial rings, a C and an A. Courtney stole Allie's ring that had an A on it because they're identical twins, so their parents wouldn't know. And she ran out of their house and said that her flag had already been stolen. I don't know how Jason was like in on it because Jason's the one who had the flag, but she confronted the girls and was like, hey, my flag's already been stolen. And so then she started up her friendship with these 4 girls. She couldn't go back to being friends with her old friends because she didn't know anything about them. She had to like build new friendships from scratch. And also she did it to torture Allie. So she picked 4 like quote unquote losers to become her new like posse because she wanted to ruin Allie's life. She started dating Ian Thomas to ruin Allie's life because she was conniving. And the real Allison was pissed. And so she ended up in like mental hospitals because her twin sister conned everyone into thinking that she was actually Allie. And so Allie blames the 4 girls in addition to Courtney for ruining her life. So she, on the night of the slumber party, is who killed Courtney, who was their Allie. And now she's going to kill them. And they hear like muffled screaming from a closet, and they open the closet and there's Ian Thomas's dead body and Melissa is in there with him. And so Melissa had been kidnapped by Allie as well. And just like, cause she figured out that Allie and Courtney had swapped places, or that Allie had been the one to kill Courtney, or Courtney kill Allie, whatever she figured out that the twin who was here killed the twin who was gone. And then the twin who was here lights the house on fire. And somehow the girls lock her in the house and all of them get out. And then the sirens come, police come, they can't find a body. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But they're like pretty sure that Allison is dead. And the book closes with like the possibility that she's not. So very interesting. Definitely a better villain than the A's in the movie, and definitely makes more sense. Not movie, the TV show. It definitely makes more sense too, the way that, like, in the show, multiple people, they talk about the night Allie went missing, and multiple people talk about, like, seeing Allie in different spots, which makes more sense if there's two of her. So the show tries to pin it on another character who, like, quote unquote looks like Allie, but, like, you can see that she really doesn't look that much like her. They just have similar hair color. So that's super interesting. Also, in the show, I guess I don't know how much I want to spoil it, but I'm going to, so it doesn't matter. In the show, there's, like, Spencer is related to Jason De Laurentiis, not Allison, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe she's related to both, but Jason is her brother and Allison is her cousin or something like that. There's, like, a big twist with that. But in the books, they keep talking about how Allison looks like Melissa and Spencer. If you really look at her, like, they look alike, which I thought was really interesting. So I am enjoying these books. I'm excited to get through the next 8. I might wait to do an update until I either finish all 8, or I might do, like, periodic updates when something big happens. I haven't really decided how I'm going to continue this, but this vlog is already very, very long, so I'm going to try to edit it down as much as possible. But stay tuned for senior year. I'm excited to see what happens. I've read the blurb on the back of Twisted, which is the next book, the 9th book. And it says that the girls are now seniors, but it also says that something happened when they were on spring break. So I'm interested if that's going to be the new secret. I don't know. We'll see. But I will update you when I update you.